GoForThe2.com. We're into our Week 5 predictions. Week number 4 saw some upsets. Week number 5 is shaping up to be a pretty good week of college football. Let's get right into the predictions. Going in the Big Ten, Indiana, fresh off their upset victory over the Missouri Tigers in Columbia, 31-27, a team that converted 1 of 14 third down conversions, but they rushed for over 240 yards. They threw for over 250, and Indiana picked up the 31-27 victory. They're going to be facing newly Big Ten opponent Maryland, who got a dominant victory in the Carrier Dome, 34-20 over Terrell Hunt and the Syracuse Orange. They now go on the road to Indiana for back-to-back road games, but I like the Hoosiers in this matchup. I don't think there's a letdown in place. When you look at that effort last week, very solid, gutty effort by Indiana. I'm impressed with that offensive line, and more importantly, a team that's rushing for over 300 yards per game. When you look at the Maryland defense, they're giving up 199 rushing yards per game, and their offense revolves solely on quarterback C.J. Brown. I like Indiana to pick up a convincing victory over Maryland as they pick up a solid Big Ten victory at home. Let's talk about BC, Colorado State. Colorado State coming off a bye week. BC dominant a few weeks ago in their victory over USC. All eyes are on the BC Eagles and quarterback Tyler Murphy, the former Florida transfer. But I like Colorado State in this matchup. I think they pose some problems off the edge with their speed. Running back D. Hart, they're coming off a bye week. I like Jim McElwain as coach, and I think they give Boston College all they can handle. Calling for the upset. Colorado State knocks off Boston College in Chestnut Hill. Let's talk about another matchup. Penn State Northwestern. Penn State dominated the series 13-3 all-time versus Northwestern. Northwestern last victory and only victory in Penn State came in 2004. So it's a lot of pressure on the Wildcats. But when you look at their last 2 games that they lost to Northern Illinois and California, 2 much improved teams. And I like the Wildcats in this matchup. I like quarterback Trevor Siemian. He's a solid quarterback, completing 59% of his passes. This is Northwestern's first Big Ten game, so you could throw both of those games that they lost out the window. Not sold on Christian Hackenberg's consistency. He's got 4 touchdowns, 5 INTs on the year. And when you look at Penn State as a whole, they're 4-0, but they could very well be 2-2 after being pushed to the limit by UCF and being pushed to the limit by Rutgers. Not sold on Penn State as a legitimate 4-0 team. I'm taking Northwestern to strike the upset over Penn State in Happy Valley. Miami and Duke. Duke 4-0. They're very impressive, but when you look at their teams in terms of wins, not a very solid resume by Duke and quarterback Anthony Boone. When you look at Miami, 2 losses on the road to Louisville and last week on the road to Nebraska, where they were in a position to really pick up that victory, trailing 24-21, driving in Nebraska territory late in the third quarter, and then the fumble by Duke Johnson, the return to put the Cornhuskers up by 10, and really Miami squandered some chances in that ball game to pull off the upset. They're coming back at home, where last year they won 6 ball games. They were 6-1 overall at home. They were 3-3 last year on the road. So not a very good road team for Al Golden. But Kaya's come around. I like that defense. And when you look at what Duke likes to do, they like to air it out. But Miami's strength on the defensive side of the ball is pass coverage, only giving up 161 passing yards per game. I like Miami in this matchup to pick up a dominating victory at home over Duke. They pick up a much-needed ACC victory because when you look at it, Miami's backs are against the wall. They need to pick up this victory. It's do or die for the Hurricanes. Otherwise, their season's over. I'm going to stick with them one more time, calling for the upset, calling for not the upset, but a dominant victory by Miami at home. A lot of people think it could be an upset. A lot of people like Duke. I like Miami in this matchup. Let's talk about one more game that's pretty interesting when you break it down. South Carolina, Missouri. South Carolina last year down and out on the road in Columbia, down 17-0 over down 17-0 over the Missouri Tigers. Dylan Thompson did not have a very good day. They needed Connor Shaw to come off the bench, score 17 fourth quarter points to send that game into overtime, and then South Carolina did get the victory. When you look at Missouri, were they looking ahead to this ball game against South Carolina when they got knocked off by Indiana? They have some offensive line issues. They have some wide receiver issues. Matty Mark, though, 14 touchdowns on the year, and I like the way that defense matches up against South Carolina's offensive line. So I think Missouri could be in the game from start to finish. When you look at South Carolina's defense giving up 36 points per game, still not sold on the secondary by the Gamecocks. Calling for the upset. Missouri knocks off Steve Spurrier and the Gamecocks to pick up a critical SEC game on the road. I think South Carolina is good. I don't think they're great like everybody's making them out to be. And I think Missouri knocks them off on Saturday night in Columbia. Let's talk about one more game that really stands out for me. It's pretty interesting when you think about it. Stanford and Washington. Stanford won 4 of 5 over Washington. Stanford, very good quarterback in Kevin Hogan, solid offensive line, solid defense, solid head coach in David Shaw, and they seem to win these type of ball games week in and week out. When you look at last year's ball game, Ty Montgomery took the opening kickoff. The distance really set the tone for that ball game, and Washington really never responded. They had an opportunity late in that game to really make a move, couldn't convert on 4th down, and they dropped that game 31-28. They've looked lackluster in all 4 of their games, Washington. They're undefeated, trailed Georgia State last week 14-0 at the half, needed a second half comeback to really knock off Georgia State. A lot of people not sold on Washington, but they're +9 in turnover margin and 19 sacks on the year through 4 games. That's almost 5 sacks per game. Very solid defensive front led by nose guard Danny Shelton, who has 7 sacks on the year, leads the team. I like the defensive front by Washington. I think they pick up the upset over Stanford 24-20. Chris Peterson, the former Boise State head coach, gets the victory and one of his marquee wins at Washington. Stay with me all season long on the Weekly Blitz and stay with me all season long at GoForThe2.com. Should be an interesting weekend of college football. Talk to you soon.